This episode of the Real Fit podcast is brought to you by the Real Nourished newsletter. Real Nourished, reinventing your relationship with food, is for you if you are ready to stop micromanaging your food and exercise so you can start fully showing up to your life. Each biweekly issue features evidence-based tools that will help reduce your food-related anxiety, improve your body image, and help you embrace exercise as a form of nourishment, not punishment. When you subscribe, you'll get my free guide, 11 things you can do right now to feel better about your body. To get in on it, just click on the link in the show notes or visit my website, pam-moore.com.
In order to grow, you've got to move towards what scares you. You have to move towards it. You've got to face it.
Welcome to Real Fit, a podcast featuring real conversations with real women athletes. I'm your host, Pam Moore. I'm a freelance writer, body positive health coach, certified personal trainer, and a mom of two. And like you, I don't have time for bullshit. I created this show for every busy, badass woman who struggles with the question, am I enough? I'm here to tell you that you are, and my goal is to share stories that will inspire you and let you know you're not alone. Thanks for being here for this episode of Real Fit. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Real Fit podcast. This is your host, Pam Moore, and this is Catherine Apicella. She's a pelvic floor physical therapist and the owner of the Breathe and Blossom Physical Therapy Clinic in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. She's also the co-owner of Breathe and Blossom Together, a nonprofit also providing pelvic floor physical therapy. She is a certified pelvic rehab practitioner, a certified professional yoga therapist. She's a certified barefoot rehab specialist, and she also incorporates the Feldenkrais Method into her treatment. On top of everything, and I think most importantly, she is a stellar listener and an incredibly compassionate person. I know this because I originally met Catherine in the early mid 2000s when we were working at the University of North Carolina hospitals in Chapel Hill. She was a physical therapist. I was an occupational therapist, and we did many co-treatments together. She became one of my favorite coworkers and a fabulous friend. And in addition to wearing all of those hats, she is also a mom of two and an athlete. Fun fact, Catherine and I actually did a triathlon together way back in the day. As you're going to see in this episode, Catherine is just super knowledgeable, and she is driven by her passion and by her values. And I think we can all learn something, not just about pelvic floor physical therapy, what it is, who it can help, we get into that, but also anyone who is on the precipice of trying to take the next step in their life is going to get something major out of this episode. Catherine She's walking the walk. She's living her values. So without further ado, let's dive in. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope you enjoy my interview with Catherine Apicella. Catherine Apicella, welcome to the Real Fit podcast. I'm so happy you're here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks so much for inviting me.
Oh, I'm just so pumped because it's been so long since we connected. And when I discovered, Catherine and I used to work together in UNC hospitals many years ago.
Mm.
And we were out of touch. Now we're back in touch, and she's opening a pelvic floor physical therapy clinic. So we're going to hear all about that. But let's back up a little bit, Catherine. Can you tell us a little bit about what your relationship was to movement and your body growing up and how that's changed over time to where you are now?
Yeah, great question. So growing up, I just always remember being very, very, very insecure. Very, just feeling like I was a stranger in my body. I did not like my body. I was always, I was always the biggest girl, tallest kid in my class, biggest, but always big. I had broad shoulders. It's like I couldn't hide even if I wanted to, which I wanted to. And so, but as far as movement goes, I mean, we were very sports focused. We were very active as a family. We played softball as a family. We rode bikes a lot. We were always encouraged to be active. But sports and movement to me growing up was being part of a team. So again, it really wasn't me learning about myself. It was being me participating as part of a team. And I was always on defense in team sports because I had no endurance and I hated to run. And I was big. So, or playing softball as a power hitter and first baseman, but anyway, but growing up, I remember it was my first job as a PT, and a coworker invited me to a yoga class. And it was like, literally, like, it was one of those awakenings. Like I came home, like I came home to my body. Like I was like, oh, this is what it feels like to be in my body and to be aware of it and how it moves and to feel things and to sit with it. Because I think so often, in life and moving around, we tend to, we talk about we're human doings, not human beings, but we tend to be so disembodied because we're so busy chasing the next thing or doing the next thing. And I think even in sports and athletics, it can be the same thing. Our body becomes this vehicle to get us to one place or another. But are we embodied? Like, do you have the knowledge and the awareness of what your body is doing and what it's actually experiencing? And that's really changed for me. And it's only helped inform like what I do now as a PT.
You just said so much there that I want to unpack. Can we back up to the word embodiment? Tell us again, what does it mean to be embodied?
I don't know that I can answer that. I guess I can only use, come from my frame of reference and what I consider it. But I consider being embodied that you are literally at home experiencing yourself through your senses, through, feeling what, when I move my finger, I'm noticing the joints in each finger move. And when I'm walking and standing, I'm, again, not all the time, I'm not consciously aware of every single thing I'm doing, but I think it becomes more helpful when things just aren't quite right or aren't quite working, that you can then just kind of take a step in and hang on. Well, what am I feeling right now? What is happening in my body? Are my shoulders up here? Am I clenching my jaw? Are my fists tight? Is my breathing shallow? All those types of things that just helping to create that sense of just awareness, just better awareness of how my body is reacting to what's going on around me. And I also think too, so I had some mentoring in the Feldenkrais Method as well, which is the somatic therapy, which really, I had a PT who was a Feldenkrais practitioner, and he utilized this method of just being in your body. He wanted to know what it was like to be in his patients' bodies. He wanted to experience it. He wanted to know. And he had a favorite thing he used to say that I love. And he said, most of us go through life like we're driving with the emergency brake on, and we just keep pushing and, powering through, especially if we have pain, especially if we have, that we're just trying to like motor and just, instead of kind of, listening and working with ourselves. So I think that maybe that's it, working with ourselves.
That's really interesting to me. I want to back up a little bit and ask you more, if you can, two things. Can you describe a little bit more specifically about the dissatisfaction you said that you felt with your body? Can you talk a little bit more about what that was like what thoughts were you having, number one, but also number two, and I can always come back to this if I bet we're going to get sidetracked, but also how can being embodied, or maybe the better question is, can being embodied help us accept the shape and size of our body that we are in and feeling like, hey, I'm at home in this body, whatever it looks like or feels like.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, such great. Oh my gosh, this is so great. So yeah. So growing up, I remember overhearing my father talking to his father, my grandfather, and saying, the only one who looks like they have a weight problem is Catherine. Talking about my kids, about all of his kids.
How old were you?
8 or 9, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, feeling that way. And we always had we were very, I did a lot of like closet eating like we were very, restricted on what we could eat and things like that. And so, I mean, I look back at it now and laugh, but the things that I used to find and eat were like ridiculous. I swear I once opened a jar of pasta sauce. I'm not kidding. And ate it. And I swear I was fed. I was fed.
I believe you.
But I totally, we had these crazy, my sister, we used to eat cake mix, but anyway.
That doesn't sound so bad, but
do
you mean dry, like without adding the, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
No judgment.
Yeah, I know. So it's just, we were in a household that was very, I was very much, I was a people pleaser. I wanted to be, and I was the good girl, like, oh, tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I'll do it exactly the way you want it, just the right way. Mm-hmm. And so, just always seeing those representations of what a female body was supposed to be, never feeling like I fit into it. So I also remember sitting, I was in high school or something. And my father was like, it was one night I came home from being out with my friends and I was sitting there, I was looking at my legs and I shook my head and I just grabbed my inner thigh and I was like, I wish you could just take a knife and cut it off. And my dad like kind of laughed. He's like, what? He's like, do you hear yourself? And again, it wasn't in any way. I was just like, just all those little things, those things you just constantly look and see and you can't unsee. And it just day in, day out, all the things you're constantly reminded of that aren't good, that aren't what they should be. And, of course, most of this was completely, self-driven.
Totally. We say should, like in air quotes, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think, honestly, becoming a parent was really helpful in that. I really wanted to make sure that I never, sorry, excuse me.
Oh, take your time. No, you're fine.
That I never perpetuated or never allowed that type of thinking to be expressed to my sons. I never wanted them to feel in any way that number one, that a woman's body was in any way something to be, I'm losing my, but something to be, looked at or I never wanted them to see me being self-deprecating and then beginning to see women in a certain way as an object or as something to belittle or in any way, or at least to take, and I also never wanted them to feel in any way inadequate themselves physically. So I always made sure to actually, I let myself be seen the way I was. I never made any, apologies for it. I never, I was who I was. I didn't make any sort of big deal about it. We talked about bodies and it was not a big deal. And I think that was really helpful as well. Again, and this is something that I kind of was thinking about in preparing for this interview, kind of the whole idea of this negative self-talk, and that, it's so much easier for us to approach people we care about with love and compassion. And why is it so hard for us to do that to ourselves? If we'd save the worst criticism for ourselves.
It's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
We all struggle with this. I totally relate about the motherhood thing. I thought I thought a switch would flip and automatically I would suddenly know how to accept myself, but it took more work than just knowing that I should accept myself.
Yeah.
But so talk to me a little bit more about what happened to your self-image when you understood and started to feel what it felt like to be embodied.
I think I began to see beyond the physical, the appearance, and to really understand that it's more about how I feel. Like, I could look like $1 million and feel like crap. And ultimately, how is that going to be of any benefit, going forward? And just feeling like I want to be, capable and mobile and, get on the floor and off the floor and run a marathon if I want to, and, do all these things for as long as I want to. And I want to, and whether or not I'm, 150 pounds or 180 pounds or, have a little thigh jiggle or, a belly, it's more about, am I able to do the things that I want to do? And am I healthy? And am I feeling good? And that's really what's come to the forefront, for me as far as being.
So as a professional, you've been a PT for how many years now?
Oh my God. So many. It's funny. I don't think I graduated PT school in 1999. So it's like 20. But for like about half that time, about 8 years, I was very part-time. So, after I had my kids, I worked like a couple days a week, evenings a week, until George was 8. And then that's when I kind of delved back into full-time. So I've only been full-time for the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
George was 8. Yeah. And Evan was 6 when I went back. Yeah.
So how old are your children now?
12 and 10.
12 and 10. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, I think it's fair to say you're something of an expert on the human body, and you're helping patients all the time to live their best lives. So can you share with listeners one 5-minute practice that everybody could do to feel more embodied?
This is something that I really like to do with my clients. I use a lot of kind of grounding through using your senses. So the one way you can become really in tune and settle in the present moment is to experience what's going on through your senses right now, because you can't, that's the only thing that's happening right now. So I'll take people through a little guided meditation body scan. And so I could take you through a little mini body scan if you want to just kind of.
That'd be cool. Can we do like a 60-second body scan? Can we interrupt our normal programming to do a body scan?
or just do a minute. Yeah. We can totally do a little mini scan here.
Let's do it. And if you're listening and you're not, you shouldn't do this if you're driving, right?
No. Yeah, I probably wouldn't do it when you're driving.
Yeah, so if you're operating heavy machinery or driving,
exactly,
don't do it. But if you're chopping up maybe not if you're using a knife, but if you use your judgment, we're going to try a body scan.
Down. Yes, put the knife down.
Stop what you're doing, and now we will begin.
Exactly. It's 60 seconds. Anybody can do this. And I think it's a great idea, especially if you're stressed or anything. Okay. So you just want to first, if it's comfortable for you to do so, close your eyes and begin to notice how you're breathing. And as with any awareness activity, you want to just notice. Don't do anything about it. Where is your breath coming from? How's the quality of your breathing? Is it shallow or is it deep? Are you feeling the breath being hurried in any way? And then once you're aware, you can begin to slow it down. If you're able to breathe in through your nose, breathe in through your nose. And you can breathe out through the nose as well. Elongating your breath to help to calm your system. And then start from the top of your head and just as though you're moving yourself through a conveyor belt. Starting from the top of your head, begin to gently scan through the face, back of the neck, the jaw, the shoulders, down through each arm to your fingers, and back up and down through your chest and your back, down through the belly into the pelvis, and then through your hips, down through the right leg, all the way down from the hip to the knee, to the ankle, to the foot, and to the toes. And then return to the left hip. Moving from the hip to the knee, down all the way to the ankle, the feet, and the toes. So this is a super quick and dirty way to kind of become aware of what's happening. But I like to use that as a way to notice what's happening. What are you feeling? Are you noticing any bunching of tension in any part? Are you noticing any holding? Especially with the breathing, a lot of times when we're tense and tight, we hold our breath. We don't even realize we're doing it. Mm-hmm. Clench our jaw, hike our shoulders, clench our pelvic floor, squeeze our butt, all those sorts of things. And once we can just begin to just become aware, another thing I always say is you can't change what you're not aware of. So the first thing you have to do is just become aware. What are we doing? Meditation, mindfulness, all those sorts of things. It always starts with awareness. We're always so quick to be like, oh, I gotta fix it. No, well, but what are we fixing? We don't know.
Yes.
Maybe, So just notice, because it might be perfectly fine. Things might be great, So just noticing where you're at. And then building on that, you can also use your sense. If you're really finding it hard to ground yourself, then you can use, okay, what am I hearing right now? What am I tasting? What am I feeling with my sense, with my touch? What am I smelling? All those types of things that can really help you again become, here I am, if we're really having trouble getting into that moment with everything going on. Another thing too with mindfulness meditation, again, is it's not about trying to empty your brain of thoughts. It's about acknowledging that the brain has thoughts and being okay with it and just allowing yourself to continue on acknowledging and releasing the thoughts. Okay, so little.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I love that little injection of self-care into our interview. But you mentioned clenching the pelvic floor, which leads me to what I wanted to ask you anyway. Tell me about a couple of things. How did you become passionate about pelvic floor physical therapy? And how did you segue from, when we knew each other, we were working in ICUs, in the neuro unit. We were in acute care wearing, Smurf colored scrubs. And that's a big leap from doing what we were doing, helping stroke patients stand up and get to the bathroom, to really getting into the finer points because that's really detailed work, what you're doing. So talk to us about how you got interested, what is it, and how did you make the leap from PT to opening your own clinic?
I'd been, I guess, out of, doing just very part-time work, still acute care for a while. Actually, a former student, who I became friends with when we were at UNC, she ended up graduating and going into pelvic floor. And she's like, you know what? I know, you're really into like posture and alignment and breathing. She's like, I really think you'd like this. She's like, you should take the first entry level, training. And even if you don't use it, so I said, oh, okay, well, that sounds interesting. By that time, I'd already had my children. So I did have some issues, a couple minor issues, but I'd also gone through Ginger Garner's professional yoga therapy certification. So Ginger Garner's a PT who has basically made her life's work to integrate yoga into rehabilitation and medicine. And so she
I'll
created,
link to her in the show notes.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be great.
I'll
And
find her.
she, so she created this certification for healthcare professionals and that's why I was like, I was really so into yoga, but I was really interested in helping, kind of incorporating it and using it as a treatment modality in a way, but, or at least just a perspective, like a paradigm. So through that, actually, I also became that at the time. And then MA was telling me about this, and it kind of meshed together along with this whole, and in the training, I unearthed this whole thought of why not me? And that's what's kind of carried me through. So I took the training, loved it, was like, yes, I want to do it. And then I was kind of caught in that catch-22 of, all right, well, I want to get a job doing this, but I need experience, but I need, to get experience, I need a job. So, and I didn't know if I was ready to go back to full time. And people were like, no, you need to go full time if you want to do this. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So I finally ended up getting a position at UNC, actually, an outpatient, yes, and which was fabulous. But then 6 months later, we moved to Pennsylvania because my husband got a new job. I know.
Okay.
So, which was a shame.
Where in Pennsylvania are you?
Yeah, I'm in the town's called Pipersville. It's in Bucks County, which is a suburb about an hour north of Pennsylvania or Philadelphia. Sorry. But then I found a job here at an outpatient orthopedic clinic, working in pelvic floor. So those 6 months were, amazing. Amazing. It was an amazing experience. I really enjoyed it a lot. Hospital-based outpatients. I saw a lot, got a lot of really amazing mentoring. Thanks, Jen. And so it really helped position me well for the outpatient clinic. But ortho was really not my thing. From there it became, I felt like for a while, again, I felt like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. And we were seeing patients every 30 minutes. And it was really hard for me to do that and feel like I was providing good care. And
so in a typical day, like in an 8-hour day, talk us through how many people are you seeing in an 8-hour day?
Depending on if I had evaluations were an hour, but I could see up to every half hour minus an hour for lunch. So that 14 patients.
Yeah. So
14 patients in a day. And
it's
a lot.
And you're trying to talk them through their exercises, and they're probably trying to tell you their stories, and you're trying to listen, right? It's like, I just want to kind of lay the scene for people listening who haven't worked in healthcare. It's insane. It's like especially if you're filling in for somebody, you don't know this patient, you're like reading their whole chart. You're trying to understand, who is this person? Right, what do they need? What have they done before? And trying to stay on the schedule. Right? You can't be printing out their home exercise program at 2:29 when your next person is coming in at 2:30. You have to be an insane time manager. It's very stressful.
And I was always watching the clock, and I always remember thinking to myself, I'm not listening to you. Like I'm half listening to you because I'm already realizing the fact that I have 20 minutes to work with you so I can stay on schedule because I'm already late. I was always running behind, always. I mean, I just couldn't. And then we had techs who worked with us with exercises, but I've realized, and again, these are all things that I came to realize about myself, that I was just kind of trucking on through. And I'm like, I'm not like do 10 leg lifts and do 20 squats. And, I'd much rather do like a corrective exercise. Like, let's make the most of what you're doing, and let's really make sure that we're targeting what we want to target. And it's hard to, I can't really leave that on a tech because that's part of what I do as a skilled service. Yeah. So
it's an art and a science, and you know how to do the art. It's not rote. For listeners, a tech is somebody who has basic skills, but they have not gotten a master's degree or a doctorate, and they don't have the experience, and they don't have the deep well of knowledge and the ability to sort of shift gears depending on how your patient is responding.
And I think, and nor should they. And that was a lot to expect from them. And so again, I mean, my boss did it, and I was always amazed by how efficient she was, and she always made patients feel like they were, getting all of her attention, and she was very, but it's funny I want to reflect back to what you had said before about the whole thing with the perfectionism, having everything be just right. Again, through this, I was really coming through an evolution of who I was as a therapist, and once I realized, number one, that I'm trying to force myself to fit this mold. I just don't. It doesn't align with. I don't align with it. It doesn't resonate with me. I'm like feeling, oh my gosh, that's okay. I think, and that's why I knew I had to go out on my own, because it was so ingrained in me to be such a follower. Again, that give me the parameters, I'm going to stick with them. I'm, people pleaser, like, give me the, this is what I have to do. Okay.
The good girl that wants to cut her thighs off is like, oh, this isn't working for me. Yeah. You can't stay stuck in there forever.
You can't, because you're just going to be denying part of yourself. And I kept denying, thinking there's something wrong with me because I wasn't in step here. I wasn't doing what I should be doing. I wasn't building the way I should be. I wasn't, spending the time that I should be. I wasn't, and thinking there's just always something wrong with me for it. And I said, no, this isn't the way I work. And that's okay. So it's another reason why I was like, I felt, that that I felt so much peace about leaving and doing my own thing, because, and once I realized that, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm out. I've got to move on in some way.
Yeah. Can you stop right there? Because I have a quick question for you. I think that many women, especially so many of us, are people pleasers. We do feel like there are certain expectations on us, and it can be really hard to be who we really are in light of that. What advice, if any, what would you say to somebody who isn't quite to the point of having made the shift, whatever it is? What helped you get in touch with your reality, the need to make a change?
Yeah. I mean, I think, I really think that the big catalyst for me was really finding my why. Really like what really, makes me want to keep going. And so when Crystal and I formed a nonprofit organization dedicated to helping women in at-risk groups access health and wellness services, again, many times services that aren't readily available through insurance, and then and women, even if it were, women in these groups often are underinsured or uninsured. So being able to provide these services to women at low to no cost. So that really helped me as far as specifically kind of moving on to start my for-profit business, because I was using that to kind of help fuel and sustain the nonprofit. So
okay. So did you launch the nonprofit and the for-profit simultaneously?
Yeah. So the nonprofit's kind of been, we're still in very preliminary stages with our nonprofit. The big thing is we're still waiting on our tax exempt status. So we can't, really go out and ask for donations, things like that until then, but we're kind of laying the groundwork and trying to find, like people want to partner with us, and also looking for organizations or people to help us with finding, clientele that we could help. So we're still kind of in that that fact finding mode. So we're always looking for volunteers, but we're still in that mode. Yes.
So local volunteers in the northern Philadelphia area, Bucks County. Right. Okay. All right. Plug for volunteers. What's it called?
Together.
Breathe and Blossom. Okay. So Breathe and Blossom is the for-profit. Breathe and Blossom Together is the nonprofit. And all the links will be in the show notes. Okay. Awesome. And wait, do volunteers need to have any specific qualifications? Do they need to be a certain type of professional, or just need to want to help?
Well, we have kind of both, because we're going to be, we're definitely looking for practitioners who'd like to, massage, Reiki, acupuncture, chiropractic, all those types of that, who would want to provide their services either at we could reimburse them, or they could donate their services. But we're looking for those types of volunteers, but we're also looking for volunteers who just want to help and want to, who don't have particular, skills per se. But we're looking for everybody, actually.
Okay. Awesome. All right. That'll go in the show notes too. Okay. So was finding your why something that, you went off on a retreat one day with a journal and you forced yourself to think about it, or did it sort of come to you, when you got quiet? Like, how did that happen?
Such a great question. I feel like I've done a lot of I wish I could go on a retreat. Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I've done a lot. I've tried to do a lot of journaling and self-reflection, and I was seeing a therapist to just help again with knowing I have these, blocks and things I need to work through, and it's really, mind through to get to the essence of who I am because I have just so many built in, just walls that I just wasn't allowing myself to go there, so I think that was part of it. And then I think just also realizing that, I don't think it was one, I'm trying to think, it wasn't one day that I woke up and was like, ooh, this is it. It was really kind of a evolution. And then things just kind of aligned the way they did. And then I was like, okay, this is it. This is what I have to do. I mean, I did hire a business coach too, because I wanted to, if I was like, I knew myself. And that was another thing too, that I really, if I'm going to do this, I have to be brutally honest with myself. And I know that I need a kick in the pants. I need structure. And it's kind of like, again, something you referenced before about kind of the, if you were to kind of think about, like, I remember when I decided that I was going to run the Marine Corps Marathon, I was like, shit. Oh, excuse me.
You can say shit on here.
That's okay. So, yeah, perfect. So I agreed to do it. And then I was like, oh my God. Okay, I got 6 months. Okay, I better get down to business. So I immediately found like a, marathon training plan and was like, every week I'm doing it. I'm doing what I need to do because I'm going to make the most of this. I'm not just going to, so it's the same kind of thing. I was like, if I'm going to do this, I need a plan. And for this is a little bit harder for me because it wasn't quite as like, now there are things about the marathon that I didn't really do a ton with or kind of try to figure out as I went along, like nutrition and that sort of thing. But with the business, there were so many pieces to it. I was like, I need somebody to help me find that structure and plan that I can follow. Because I need that. I'm kind of disorganized and I tend to be I have a little bit of inertia. So I need a little bit of a gentle, like, come on. I think that kind of comes down to the whole, like, being a little bit an introvert and it being hard for me to kind of like go out there and hey, sell myself and that sort of stuff. That's the hard part. But so. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm a card carrying extrovert and I can tell you that's hard for me too. So
good to know. Yeah.
You hired a business coach. Was it a coach who was specifically for PTs?
Yeah, she mainly works with PTs. I mean, she is a PT and her niche is kind of helping. I had actually come across her. She had a free webinar. It was like a 5-day webinar on like what you need to do to open your practice for, little to no money. And it was really great. I mean, very well thought out and just lots of comprehensive, lots of good information. So somebody who was really like self-starter, like just point me the direction I'll go, like definitely could do it. So that really resonated with me. So I kind of decided to, go a little bit further forward with her and then talk to her about it. It was kind of between her and then another kind of like coach. There's a husband and wife coaching team who are more like pelvic PT focused, but I felt like I was getting a little bit more one-on-one hand holding with her. So
which is nice.
Yeah. So that's why I decided to go with her and she's very individualized. And so it's not specifically to pelvic PT, but it's definitely, but she's been amazing with everything so far.
That's awesome. So what have been some of the biggest challenges to getting this thing started, even with having support? Because I know how that is too. Like it's hard to sort of map out your own course. And I think for so many of us, I know for me, when I was trying to be a freelance writer and I would look at other writers, I'd see them on Twitter and on Instagram and wherever, it looks like it's all together. And every once in a while I have this revelation that I'm like, maybe I look that way to other people. I still don't always know what I'm doing. Right. So we're all in this, like comparing, as my husband says, we're often comparing our insides to other people's outsides. So which is not, it's not fair. So tell us a little bit about your insides and what were some of the concerns and fears about going out on your own and how do you tackle those?
I mean, the confidence thing, of course, is we touched on this before, the whole perfectionism thing, like it's not perfect. It's not, and that has been drilled into me, like, imperfect action is always better than perfect, because you just have to go. And actually my former bosses were really good examples of this. They were husband and wife who opened their own clinic, and they were constant examples of like, hey, we're gonna do this. Okay, let's do it. And it just kind of like, let's get it going and move it and keep going, move on and keep it up with the momentum. I was kind of like, oh, wow, I would have taken me longer to do that. I would have been really like looking this over a little bit more and proofreading and and then ended up, just like you said, just kind of like, procrastinating on it in a way, but under the guise of like, if it's not quite ready.
Yes. Under that guise, you don't think that you're procrastinating. You think that you're putting your best foot forward. Well, how do you draw the line? How do you get real with yourself and go, okay, Catherine, it is time.
Yeah. I think like right now, these days, it's like, I have a schedule and I did write out a schedule for myself on, and and again, this is something that my coach had helped me figure out, like, what are your kind of categories that you need to be working on, like client engagement, marketing, content generation, that sort of stuff. And then under that, what are your tasks, specific tasks you're going to create under those categories, and then assign yourself these tasks and in time blocks during the day. And so that's been a great way for me to kind of, so I've realized with my client engagement, that's been I've been like, oh, here's the hour just passed and what have I done? So that's been a great way for me, just to kind of see, like, okay, blocked out this hour to do this. And knowing too, when I am really like in the zone and doing stuff, how quickly I can do things. And when I'm like a little bit, my self-confidence gets, takes a hit, when I'm just feeling a little, then how much time I can waste. That's definitely been good for me. So I've been trying to get real with myself about just holding my own feet to the fire. My coach gave me, she's like, I'm giving you a goal. You're going to interact with 5 new people every day to expand your network. And I was like, okay.
That's awesome. So would an interaction, would like commenting on an Instagram account count as an interaction?
Yes. And to try. Okay.
So it doesn't have to be a deep interaction. Right. It could be establishing a relationship.
Exactly. Because that's another thing for me too, is I don't like the idea of just going up to people saying, hey, guess what I do? But to kind of start creating. So yes, that's definitely part of it. So I'm sorry, did I answer your question?
Okay. Yeah, you did. I was asking you kind of what are the barriers, and you were saying, it sounds like you didn't use the word overwhelm, but it kind of sounded like overwhelm. Yeah. And the coach is helping you create, like, by helping you conceptualize how to make a schedule. And actually I'm working on that. My time blocking has been something I've really been trying to commit to lately. And so I'm kind of curious for my own self, but maybe listeners will be curious too. I just love details. Do you time block using your electronic calendaring system, or do you do it in a day planner, or is it like on Trello? Like what do you like? Analog, digital?
I just made myself a spreadsheet, an Excel spreadsheet, because I'm on my computer pretty much all day long anyway. So I just have it open, and and this way I have the tasks in it, and then I can, whatever I've kind of been working on, but haven't finished, then I'll kind of shift them over to the next day or the next, so that I have so I have everything laid out there for me. And then I can, change, modify as I go. So that's just kind of the way I do it.
We're like organization sisters. I was literally doing that exact system up till like 10 days ago. And now I'm experimenting with Trello. And I'm not sure how I feel about it yet. Okay. But the spreadsheet, I don't know, was
Trello,
working. I don't know. We can talk offline about Trello. I'm not an expert working on it, but anyways.
Yeah. And another thing, just biggest block. Yeah. Like you said, definitely confidence. Yeah. And again, not feeling like I know enough, not feeling like, the whole imposter syndrome, thinking like, oh my, who the hell am I to, like, when I see people like, I have 35 years of experience and la, 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 la. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then, looking at everybody's social media feeds and just seeing how everything looks so great. And it's so true. If you're looking at everybody's outsides and feeling like I'm feeling like such a crazy person, with all the whole like trying to post and create content and all sort of thing. I feel like everything's up in the air, but yeah. So those have definitely been the big blocks that I've been working through, constant battle.
Mm-hmm. What kind of keeps you energized when you do feel like, oh my God, everyone has it together and I'm just winging it? What kind of gives you a little boost to go, okay, I'm going to just take the next step, even if I'm not sure what it is?
I think that I look back I kind of think back like to some of the amazing feedback I've gotten from patients. I had one patient who was a physical therapist and took the pelvic floor training class because after seeing me, like she was kind of so inspired to do it that she sees pelvic floor. And I was like, oh my God.
That's amazing.
Yes, it was really, and it was just so things like that where I know I'm making a difference. I know. And plus I think, again, for a long time, I felt like I had this weird, like worldview as far as PT goes, where I just I don't know that I agree with a lot of the stuff, but there must be something wrong with me because I don't agree with these things going on. But then seeing other therapists and how they've been talking about, I'm like, yes, exactly. That's how I feel too. And again, trying to back away from all of that need for approval and need for, validation also is huge and just really trying to just put my head down and go after my vision has been what I've been trying to do. So it's
And you are doing it. I want to tell everybody you are doing it. I see you out there. I see you. You're opening your clinic. You're literally opening a clinic. You're doing it. So I think it's remembering kind of your purpose and knowing who you've helped, and also surrounding yourself by like-minded people and that pelvic floor PT community who is also doing it outside the box.
Definitely.
Yeah. So let's get back. So tell me a little bit about, I think there are myths about pelvic floor PT. I think a lot of people don't exactly know what it is, who it helps, how it works. Tell us a brief overview of pelvic floor PT, and specifically, how can it help female athletes?
Okay. So everyone who has a pelvic floor can benefit from pelvic floor PT. So I've treated men, I've treated women, I've treated children. And honestly, I always like to say, your pelvic floor is just another sling of muscles in your body. So as pelvic floor PTs, we focus a little bit more on the pelvic floor and its functions. And a lot of times, again, we don't think about it because it usually those muscles work automatically. They are involved in, so many different functions: sexual function, urination, defecation, even like pumping blood and lymph. So postural function. They stabilize our pelvis, our lumbar spine, our hips. So they are really important in helping us function every day. But again, we don't normally think about it because they function automatically unless we've had an issue going on. So, and again, any dysfunction related to bowel, bladder, and sexual function is a pelvic floor related issue to some extent. Sometimes, again.
So bowel, bladder, sexual function.
So
that could mean like incontinence. It could mean... What about the sexual stuff?
Intercourse.
Could that mean like
painful intercourse? Definitely. Even like pain with arousal, pain with orgasm, difficulty achieving orgasm. Sometimes that can be actually a strength issue. Your pelvic floor orgasm is a pelvic floor muscle contraction. So those types of things as well. Again, when it comes to sexual function, usually painful intercourse is what we most commonly see. But even men can have issues. Sometimes pelvic floor PT can be helpful for erectile dysfunction. Once medical causes have been ruled out. But that's why it's important and pelvic pain is huge. Pelvic pain again in men and women, bladder pain, urinary urgency or frequency, the feeling of constantly having to go to the bathroom. People, especially women postpartum, like, why do I feel like I have to pee all the time? These things are, again, one of the biggest things we like to say is common is not normal. So it's common to leak after having kids, but it's not normal. It doesn't mean that's something you just have to live with, put on your poise and move on with life. For some women, that's okay. They've decided that that's how they want to live. And hey, I one of my big things is, you're an adult. I give you this information for your own education and benefit, but it's up to you what you do with it. So some people are ready to address it. Some people aren't. But the fact that I think most people don't realize that you can address it. You can make changes. You can stop leaking. You can, jumping on a trampoline, you don't have to leak with jumping on a trampoline. I think it's, for a lot of postpartum women, that's a big one. I can't do jumping jacks anymore. I can't jump on a trampoline. And I think, so that, moving along to athletes, a lot of times athletes who participate in, especially like prolonged impact sports, trampolinists actually apparently is a huge prevalence of incontinence in trampolinists. But gymnasts, cheerleaders.
Is this regardless of having had children or not had children, just all that jumping? Okay.
And a lot of times what it comes down to is basically, the muscle function. So sometimes if there's muscle function and pressure management. So if we're training our core, but in a way that's not kind of preserving the alignment and coordination of the respiratory diaphragm and the pelvic diaphragm, then we can have issues. So a lot of times, again, kids, especially young kids and older women, even undergo really intense core training, but there's a lot of compensation that goes along with that. So the biggest about piece of advice I can give to people is really pay attention to your breathing. And diaphragmatic breathing is so important when you're exercising. and it doesn't mean you have to be able to, people think diaphragmatic breathing, you think belly breath, relaxed breathing. It's not that. It's using your diaphragm. It's allowing the rib cage to expand and release, but you're able to get that full breath even while you're exercising. So
did you just post something about that to Instagram?
So I posted a diaphragmatic breathing, a long versus a deep breath. I've been kind of, and in fact, that's something else that I want to kind of post on as well is kind of breathing for exercise. And, you can train, there are breathing trainers out there where you can actually breathe. One of the ways that you can train your breathing is actually doing exercises and then breathing through a balloon, blowing up a balloon, so that you're like do a plank and blow up a balloon and that sort of thing. But,
while you're in the plank position, you're blowing up a balloon. So that will make you hyper aware of what you're
basically, you're overloading your diaphragm. You're strength training your diaphragm, to basically be able to accommodate more. So pressure management definitely has, sorry, I'm kind of have two different things going on. So I'm thinking pressure management, but I'm also thinking about the ability of your pelvic floor to move through its full excursion. So again, if you're doing a lot of core training where you're doing a lot of gripping, then your pelvic floor can end up being in this kind of tight grip position, which doesn't allow it to move through its full range of motion. So when you jump, when you trampoline, when you land or something, your pelvic floor needs to eccentrically lengthen, kind of like when your quads lengthen eccentrically when you to bend your knees to absorb the impact of a landing. Your pelvic floor has to do that as well. If you have a tight pelvic floor because you've been gripping it, because you've been doing a lot of core, high intensity core training, or just a lot of where you're just holding yourself a lot, then the pelvic floor isn't able to do that lengthening and accepting of that load, and you leak. That's part of it.
Oh, that's fascinating. That's fascinating. So will you maybe email me a couple links so I could share them in the show notes on maybe if you have a blog post or an Instagram post or something like that to share with folks? That'd be amazing. That's so enlightening. And so if an athlete were to come to you, you could help them with not leaking, any pain that they might have. Can you help people with performance? Not sexual performance, but like athletic performance. I'm sure a sexual performance. I hate the word sexual performance. Like it's not a performance unless you're a porn star. But you're doing a sex scene on camera. It really isn't a performance. But that's a episode for another day. Oh my God, totally. What about why is sex so funny? Could it improve your athletic performance if you have a well-trained pelvic floor?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. And even just becoming aware of posture and alignment, things like that. Like, a couple quick tidbits, like say for running, if you leak when you run, just take a look at your posture. And like, if you can take a video of yourself, are you upright, or, is your pelvis shifted forward, or are you kind of the best posture to actually be in? It's a slight lean forward, not hinging at the hips, but like you're leaning forward as though you're like what do they call those skiers? Ski jumper. You're kind of like slightly leaning forward almost at the ankles, but it's just almost like you're just, because that helps to stack everything. It stacks your rib cage over your pelvis over, and that really helps with getting everybody on board and aligned. And that's number one, just alignment being the best position. So that's one little tidbit. But things like that.
Nice. So someone could come see you and you could do a gait analysis while they're running. Do you see, I know you come to people's houses, right? So, and they, tell me where you work, how you work. Can people see you on Zoom or only if you're in the Philly area? So I see people in their homes. I'm mobile. So I see people in their homes, or I can also see them via telehealth. So I can only see people, I'm licensed in Pennsylvania. So I can only see people in Pennsylvania, but I can see people anywhere in Pennsylvania, through telehealth, definitely. For physical therapy. If it were, kind of a wellness type of scenario, something like then, but I work out of network as a kid. I work out of network. I don't take insurance. So that's another little thing. But as far as to provide physical therapy services, I'm licensed in Pennsylvania. Okay. So if you need strictly PT, anyone in the whole state, in the Keystone State, right? Anyone in the Keystone State can come see you via Zoom. And if you're outside of Pennsylvania, but you want wellness practices in your life, maybe you can help people become
Yep.
more embodied or things like that.
Yeah.
That can be
Yes,
anyone,
absolutely.
anywhere.
Yeah. In fact, I am trying to,
Awesome.
I do kind of small, mini like yoga classes, like just, like a few people in the class or meditation type things as well, breathing. So
nice. So people could get together like in a small group, like maybe if your book club is like, hey, you know what, as an alternative to book club, the 6 of us could hire you for an evening, have some tea, have some wellness.
And another thing too that there's a big for me is workshops. I just want to get the word out, and that you say book club, if book clubs ever want to hear about pelvic floor stuff, and it's amazing what once people realize that the space is safe to talk, then you realize, the person sitting next to you has been having the same issues, but nobody's ever talked about it. So that's one of the biggest things that I'm so gratified by with what I do, is that, to help people gain this power, and like, oh my gosh, I know what to do now. Oh my God, I don't have to like be afraid to leave my house because I don't know where the bathroom is. I can have sex now and it doesn't hurt. So now we can try to have a baby, those sorts of things. It's just to see that, that type of like, at most 9 times out of 10, people are like, why did I never hear about this before? I'm going to tell everybody I know. I'm going to go tell my doctor. I mean, because people are still coming to me, an 18-year-old with bladder pain. She did her own research. She self-referred herself to PT because she's like, she found it in a support group. She's like, people kept saying it's probably pelvic floor dysfunction. You need to go see a pelvic PT. So she just sought out pelvic PT on her own because no doctor she ever saw gave her any indication that this would be helpful. And that's one thing I will say too is overactive bladder and bladder pain, like we call it interstitial cystitis or painful bladder syndrome. PT is considered to be like grade A, first line evidence for, to help with improving quality of life and improving symptoms. So yes.
Wow.
So it's really important. And unfortunately there's still just not enough awareness being raised. So whatever we can do.
No, I agree. I think it's better. Like I see a lot of pelvic floor PTs on Instagram and stuff, but what, when you're looking for a pelvic floor PT, are there certain certifications that are considered more valuable or more legitimate than others? Like what should consumers be looking for?
So the 2 main certifications there are the WCS, which is it's the Women's Health Clinical Specialist. Now they've changed the nomenclature for the section. Now it's pelvic health. But that's the American Physical Therapy Association. That is the Physical Therapy Board. That is their kind of designation for a clinical specialist. And then there's another certification. Herman and Wallace is a continuing education provider. They're kind of like one of the main, not the only one, but one of the main providers. Like there are other ones out there. So I apologize if I've missed any. People feel free to, pipe in. I know there's a couple of others out there. So it's called
okay. So those aren't the only ones, but those are 2 good ones that come to mind.
Which is Pelvic Rehabilitation Practitioner Certification. And I have that one. But there are also, so it is, having the specialty is good. It just means that you've taken an exam and it's proof that you've taken the coursework, but there are plenty of very, very, very skilled PTs out there who might not have those specific certifications and have extensive experience. So I think it's more, if you are looking for pelvic floor physical therapists, I think it's more important that you make sure that they do internal evaluations. Sometimes there are PTs out there that, oh yeah, I do pelvic floor, but I don't treat internally.
And by that, you mean putting on the gloves, getting the KY jelly, and getting in the vagina with a finger.
Or the rectum. Yes, exactly.
Just wanting to make sure that we are crystal clear. Okay. And I've had pelvic floor PT. I had a diastasis recti after my second child was born, and my PT was like in there, and it wasn't comfortable, but it felt necessary. And she was getting in there with like some nerves at my obturator, I think. Like, that was helpful for me. That was really helpful. I was glad I went. And I was glad I knew about it because I mentioned it to my sister, and she was like, diastasis recti. She was like, that's like a Boulder, Colorado athlete thing. My doctor, my OB never even told me about that.
what I've just seen is just consumers themselves are just getting so much more well educated. There's just so much information out there. And I think that PTs can work so well with, I mean, I've had patients who've been doing like online, like Mutu system or Restore Your Core. They're amazing, really quality rehab, or not rehab, but exercise programs devoted to these types of things. But a lot of times without that assessment, that individualized assessment to really see, okay, well, what is actually happening when I'm doing this thing? Am I doing what I think I'm doing? Because again, sometimes it can perpetuate, these types of programs can perpetuate issues that, if you're not quite aware of, like, do I have a tight pelvic floor, or I can't feel this when I'm doing this, and so having a PT to just kind of check in and say, hey, yeah, you're doing great. Keep up the good work, or hey, why don't you try doing this? Or hey, I've noticed you have you might want to focus a little bit more on relaxing and releasing your pelvic floor versus tightening and strengthening. Because a lot of times we think, oh, I'm weak, I have to strengthen, I got to kegel. And we all know, well, maybe we don't, but Kegels are not the answer for everybody. That was another myth.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely myth busted. Mm-hmm.
Oh, great. Okay. Yeah. So we're busting the myth. No. Kegels aren't for everybody. And I can attest to how important it is to be in person with your PT. I thought I was trying different things for my diastasis. I thought Pilates was the answer, and maybe it is the answer for other women. But when I got to the PT's office and I said, hey, let me show you what I've been doing in Pilates, she said, you know what? Like, you're not as stable as you could be. Like, you shouldn't be going through the whole range of motion if you can't keep it stable. Well, I didn't know that. Even if I did do it in front of a mirror, I'm not the most self-aware person. I needed her to put her hands on me, put her eyes on me, and say, that's actually not, you're not doing it right.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's also, there's a lot of stigma or a lot of fear mongering around, especially around diastasis. Like, you cannot do this exercise. Don't ever do this if you have diastasis. And it's not true. There's never there are no exercises you cannot do. It's maybe you can't do them in this way or at this intensity, or maybe right now, but with adjustments, with with some training, with just maybe changing the angle, whatever, with changing the way that you're doing it, that things are not automatically off limits to you just because you have a diastasis, because it shows up so differently in different people. And, it's also the fact that it's another myth is that it's all about how wide it is. It's not, it's about how much tension can you generate along that tissue, along that linea alba, which again, the linea alba is the tissue in between the halves of the rectus abdominis muscle. And it's connective tissue that stretches when we are pregnant, because again, we have to stretch to allow baby to it's completely normal. In some women after birth, it just does not re-knit together the way it should. So sometimes women need some assistance with that. And it could be due to lots of different factors. That's why it's a multi-dimensional thing to look at. It's not just, okay, am I tightening my abs the right way? Is it my posture? Is it my breathing? Is it, all those types of things that all factor into it.
Wow. So it could be a wider separation, but if the tension is there, maybe it's not as severe as a tighter or a smaller gap with less elasticity. Yeah. I didn't know that. That's so fascinating.
Oh, sure. And this is where, the research keeps changing and keeps updating. And so there's so many things. And that's why I've never been a black and white person even in general, but even so much, even more in pelvic PT, where there's so much gray area and it's so individual. And that's why my approach is I give you the kind of guidelines, and then I let you feel them in your own body. And I want you to come back to me and tell me what you're experiencing. And then how can we modify that specific to you? What are you noticing when you're doing these things? So then how can we modify them, make them more speak to you, work for you better, instead of saying, okay, you need to do X, Y, and Z, and, this many times a day. And, because it's not a cookbook.
Oh, that's one of the reasons I left healthcare, was because everywhere I was working was becoming more bottom line driven. And I was being told on post-op day 1, you do this, on post-op day 2, you do this. And I'm like, that's not why I have a master's degree and a professional job, to be told what I'm going to do with every patient and how long I'm going to spend with that patient. Anyways, but that's digressing. Let's switch gears. Let's move to the quick set. What's your favorite book?
Radical Remission. Yeah.
Ooh, I'm going to link to that in the show notes. Who wrote it?
I don't even know. It's so bad. But
I'll go. That's what
It's a
Google's for. No
compilation
big
of
deal.
people who had entered remission from cancer doing like non-medical therapies. Yeah. Super. Yeah. Completely.
Okay.
Very inspirational. Just wow. Yeah. Oh yeah. I highly recommend it. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Radical Remission. What's your favorite movie?
Oh my gosh. This is from, it's so nostalgic for me. Some Kind of Wonderful. It was in the 80s. Eric Stoltz, Mary Stuart Masterson. Yeah. I just loved it so much. Yeah.
I remember liking it, but now I want to see it again. I can't remember. I just remember that I liked it. I don't remember anything else about it. I think I liked the soundtrack.
Yes. Oh,
too.
so great. I had the soundtrack. Yes. It was amazing.
I had like, I think my babysitter dubbed me the tape. Remember when we used to dub tapes for each other?
Oh yeah.
Okay. What was your first car?
Park Avenue. Yeah.
Nice. Where was your first date? Either where was it? Who was it with? What do you remember about it?
I think I was thinking about this. I was in 7th grade and we went to the movies and we saw Arachnophobia. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Awesome. What's your go-to post-race or post-big workout meal?
I have to say, now that I don't eat meat anymore, cauliflower wings.
From a specific institution, or do you make them yourself?
Buffalo Wild Wings actually makes some pretty good cauliflower wings. So yeah, I like them.
All right. Put that on my list of things. I haven't tried those. What has been your most memorable race?
The Marine Corps Marathon, definitely, in 2016. Yes, my friend said, "Hey, has a marathon ever been on your bucket list?" I said, "No." She said, "Why don't we do it? It's a lottery." Like, "Oh, great, the lottery. We won't get in." We got in, and then she got hurt, and she couldn't train with me. Yeah, so then I had to do it myself. Aww. That was sad, but it was amazing. It was like I never ever thought I would do a marathon, and so I did it, and I was completely.
Okay. What is your pet peeve?
Oh my gosh. Talking with your mouth full. Now, there's a way to do it. You can pocket the food and you can still talk. But chewing with your mouth full, so you're no.
Just no. Okay. What is your superpower?
Oh my gosh, it's so funny you mentioned that because we just mentioned this. Listening and being calm. Yeah.
Listening and being calm.
Powers.
Yes, I second that. What's the fitness gear that you can't live without?
My phone, actually. I know it sounds weird, but I am always when I'm jogging, I'm listening to podcasts. And when I'm, and then I always have I'll do, I have Beachbody on demand. So I'll do Beachbody workouts or YouTube. I'll do a lot of yoga and stuff on YouTube. So I'm always have my phone to help me with,
Just staying on track. I love it.
Yep.
What's your favorite workout?
I like outdoor boot camp type workouts, or just going for a nice long leisurely jog is nice too.
What is the best advice you've ever received?
Well, definitely the why not me. That is, why not me? Definitely. But also just, the whole that you have to move in order to grow. You've got to move towards what scares you. You have to move towards it. You've got to face it. You've got to face your fears. You've got to, and just keep pushing. You've got to keep going. Yeah. I mean, that forward momentum is better than, even again, that imperfect action, as long as you're continuing to move forward, you're going to get where you need to go.
I love that. I 100% agree. And that's why you're opening your clinic. Like, that's why you're able to do it. I feel like no matter what happens, like it's already a success because you've faced a lot of those fears, right? Isn't starting the hardest? I mean, I feel like as a entrepreneur, every day is kind of a new day. You're always trying new things, but
right.
I think that's awesome. I'm impressed.
Oh, thank you. And I always feel like that. What's the worst that could happen? It doesn't work. I have to go get a real job. I shouldn't say that. I have to go, but, and then if I think about that and I'm like, oh my gosh, this has to work,
Yeah, it'll work. And so on that note, what does success mean to you?
It's funny to talk about that validation piece, but I feel like if I am able to resonate with what I believe and is really true and deep, like what I fully believe, and I'm able to to share with people if that is received. And if I find a I don't know, a space for that, I guess, then I'll feel that I've been a success, where I can find, if I find a niche, if I find an audience for what I want, I'll feel that I'll have been a success.
That's awesome. So where can people find you and your gifts online? Where are you on social? What's your website called?
Yeah. So I'm on, my website is, my company name is Breathe and Blossom. My website is breathe-blossom. And unfortunately, I'm on all the major stuff, on Instagram, on Facebook. I do have a business page on Facebook, but I mainly just go on my personal page, Catherine Apicella. Mm-hmm. And then same with on Instagram, I do have a business page, which is breathe_blossom. I know it's ridiculous.
So I'll link to all those in the show notes. Yeah. And you're on LinkedIn. That's how I feel like we've been.
Yes.
So we can link to that in the show notes too. Breathe-blossom.com.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
Breathe_blossom on Instagram. Everything will be linked in the show notes, including everything we talked about that's of note.
And then our nonprofit too. I'll throw that down there. Breathe and Blossom together.
Okay. And awesome. You guys, I mean, I've worked with Catherine when I was an OT and she was a PT at the hospital. She's the real deal. She's really passionate about her why. And if I was in the Bucks County area, I would be in your clinic in a heartbeat. Thank you so much for spending time with me and for sharing some of your knowledge with my listeners. This has been lovely.
Oh my gosh. It's been my absolute pleasure. I'm so happy, so grateful.
Well, I don't know about you, but I am so grateful that Catherine joined us today and shared some of her experiences, her stories, her knowledge with us, not just about the pelvic floor physical therapy stuff, which I think is fascinating. And I'm so glad that we now know more about what it is and how it can help women athletes in particular, but also all of us. But also the mindset stuff was really powerful for me. I really appreciated Catherine's saying, why not me? Because we all get scared in the face of a challenge, but why not you? And I love how she takes the focus away from what if I fail and turns it around into, well, you know what? That's a risk I'm willing to take, because it's not about me and what if I fail. It's about, am I living a life that is aligned with my values? So I love that Catherine is doing that. And I think, and I hope that it's a light to other people that you can do this too. And you know what? Maybe people are making it look easy on social media, but it's not easy. We know this. And that doesn't mean it's impossible. You can take a risk in some way. And what is the worst that is going to happen, right? Whatever the worst is, I think it's going to be worse if you don't get out there and try, because you will always wonder what if. So I love that Catherine is taking the step to open her clinic, open her nonprofit, and she will not look back and say, what if I tried? Because she is trying. I also thought there was so much overlap actually between the practice of embodiment and also intuitive eating and joyful movement. I know for me, when I have anxiety about, am I exercising enough, or am I eating too much, or is it too many carbs, which I've come a long way. I'm not as obsessed as I was. Certainly it's not always a linear journey. But when I come back to my body and back into my own wisdom, the issue really is never the food. It's not about the movement. It's about the feeling underneath it. It's that uncomfortable feeling that I don't want to feel, which isn't even as simple as what if I gain weight? That's not a feeling. That's a thought. Because underneath all of that, for me, is stripped away. It's like, am I enough? Am I good enough? It's not, am I thin enough? It comes down to, am I good enough? When I allow myself to really experience those feelings instead of get stuck in those thoughts. But you're going to skip over that and never really release it if you don't allow yourself to feel that feeling of, what is your body feeling when you have the thought of, what if I'm not enough? Anyway, If you want to dig into that a little bit more, if you're curious about what I offer as a body positive health coach, check out my website. Feel free to drop me a message. I would love to hear from you, see if we can work together. Also, if Catherine's story about doing something bold with her career intrigued you, if you're thinking about a career as a freelance writer, check out my ebook, 7 Pitches That Sold. There's a link in the show notes, and my listeners get 50% off with the discount code REALFIT50. As always, I just appreciate you listening. I mean, I feel like, yeah, I've got a platform here. I'm going to have a call to action. I'm going to have a couple. But the fact that you're listening at all is action enough for me. It's a bonus if you check out my website. It's a bonus if you buy my ebook. I'm just so happy you're here. If you like it, please tell a friend. If you haven't yet, I would appreciate it if you would rate it and review it on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, I'm dipping my toe back into Instagram. So if you want to find me there, I'd love to connect with you. Lots of good content, or hopefully good content. I'm at Pam Moore 303. And finally, I had the opportunity to be on the podcast, The Second Chapter. It's a production by Kristen Duffy, and she's interviewing women over 35 who made career shifts. And I've listened to some of her other guests. They're phenomenal. I'm so honored to be part of it. I talk in great detail with plenty of tangents, as is my style. I talk a lot about my journey from being an occupational therapist to becoming a freelance writer / speaker / body positive health coach / podcaster, lots of slashes in there. And if you are interested, you can go find that. Again, the podcast is called The Second Chapter. So go check that out. Kristen, I think, is just a really skilled interviewer, and I really enjoyed my time with her. Till next time, keep it real. Thanks for being here.